Hello everyone, welcome to the Eternal Card Breakdown. It's me, M. Welcome back. It's been a little bit of a hiatus, but we are actually going to be getting back into Eternals. So as a note, if you're looking for us, we're going to be probably streaming Eternal very soon. I would say within the next couple of days, we're going to be starting again and getting some recordings done, maybe getting some brews done. I've definitely got a lot of drafting to catch up on at the very least, because I'm just really excited about that. However, we're here today to talk about the new promo, Quinn Master Tracker. And wow, am I excited about this one. This one just came out today, and for the next week up until, I believe, Wednesday the 22nd, you can get a free copy of it, same as all of the previous Eternal cards, just by playing and winning a game of Versus. So yeah, if you can just set up one game, you get one free copy. I'm sure there will also be a promo bundle that contains 4 of the premiums. But yeah, it's super exciting to see Quinn finally getting some representation, because they are a super sweet card and a super sweet character, and they finally got a lore drop. So we finally have like an officially established non-binary character in lore, and I'm real excited about that too. Okay, so let's talk about Quinn Master Tracker, because this card's really interesting on a number of different levels. So we have a 5-cost, double blue primal influence, 3/4 Aegis, with summon, create, and draw a copy of the top non-power card of the enemy deck, and ultimate, when the enemy player plays a unit, you stun it. The stat type is Explorer Gunslinger, which of course is just like 2 very relevant unit types and 2 very good unit types to have together. You're not really going to be running this in like time and fire, but it's possible that you could get into some shenanigans where you'd have all 3 of those colors together, and those tribal parts matter, but hardly the most important parts of the cards. Okay. So first things first, we have a stat line, 3/4, which overall not an extremely strong stat line, but when combined with the Aegis means that the card is reasonably good at protecting you from any sort of low-level aggro creatures. Most units that are really trying to be aggressive with you cap out at around 3, so if you are playing this card like at the late end of your curve just to try and make sure that you're stabilizing against those sort of aggro decks, this is a card that will hold pretty well on the board due to the fact that it's removal resistant and has too much health to be killed by torches and a lot of the standard fire cards. So it stands up really well against lower level decks once you are getting to it in the late part of the game, and in addition it replaces itself with a extra card, so it's never card neutral in terms of what you're playing. You're always getting a card back, which means the card is always providing you with at least some value on the board for what you would consider to be effectively free in card advantage, if not in tempo. Still, the card is really sticky, and the extra stat line I think really means that you are defending your life total with this, in addition to the fact that the card also has this ultimate, which yeah, they are really good at making sure that the board stalls out even more by making sure that units that are played are stunned and unable to attack for another turn or 2. So this card can really create some like interesting protection of your life total, and that's really good because it is underneath the 6 slot and the 7 slot, which is where most of the big bombs in blue go. So it's something to play while you're getting to your larger control aspects, and also it does a little bit more. So like while you are getting yourself set up and put down, like you're just playing out different advantages, you also get to draw a copy of the top non-power card of the enemy deck. Now, there are a couple of unique things about this. First off, it's drawing the non-power cards, so you are guaranteed that the card that you are getting is going to be some kind of action that you're willing to be playing. It's similar to all other copy cards in Eternal. This should be influence-free, so you can just play whatever it is that you get. In addition, because you are creating a copy and not stealing the card off of a player's deck, this also gives you information about what your opponent is going to draw, either in the next turn or whenever it is that they draw their next non-power card. There isn't a lot of shuffling in Eternal, so it's fairly hard to counter this out. You are just going to get information for free when you play Quinn, and you're also going to get a copy of whatever the card is, which certain decks have a tendency to counter themselves, so this could potentially be very useful. It's also possible you might get something that's relatively low value, but I think if you're playing against most standard decks, you're probably going to find something that is at least mildly helpful for you in the late game, and potentially might even find like a really good bomb that allows you to win the game on its own. So it's got a little bit of high variance in what type of value you are getting out of that card, but because the ability to steal the top card of an opponent's deck in this way is just like a fairly powerful effect if you're trying to make sure that you A, have good information about what your opponent is doing, and B, just sort of like have like something that you might not have access to within the context of your normal color scheme or your normal deck. I think that this is a really interesting and powerful effect. Finally, with the ultimate, when your enemy player is playing a unit and stunning it, this really kind of creates sort of it makes Quinn into a target and makes it more likely that your opponent is going to be forced to try to interact with Quinn's Aegis, which is really, really relevant if you want to get the most value out of the card. Since most cards with low stat lines are, generally if you have a card with a low stat line and Aegis, one of the common things that you can do is ignore it. In this case, the card has a really powerful ultimate that is probably going to make it very, very difficult to ignore this card. You're going to want to try and remove it so that you can play down your units and not have them be stunned. If you're playing a deck that actually has some interaction with stun, say kill a unit that is stunned, something along those lines, this makes it even more relevant that people have to actually spend a bunch of cards to deal with Quinn, which again is actually bringing you up a card in advantage for when you're playing it. So they are really doing quite a bit here when you're setting it down, and I think that that's pretty interesting in terms of like the overall stall aspect of the card. So Quinn is a mediocrely statted drop that is decently tenacious on board and builds your board at a cost that is fairly easy to fill. Like 5 is not necessarily where you're going to find good statted units in Primal anyways. It's also not where you're going to find most of your bombs. So this is something that really, really manages that transition well while giving you something to defend the board with and slowing things down. It gives you scouting ability on your opponent, and not only that, but it gives you advanced scouting ability on your opponent. So if you're already privy to information about what's in their hand, you now have information, basically total information about the next couple of turns, and that allows you to do some really serious strategizing. And finally, it stalls the board and basically makes it so it's much, much harder to kill you, which if you're playing any type of blue control is really, really relevant. In addition, it's not a very, very deep influence card, so it controls things pretty well. Overall, I'm really, really happy with this card. I think that it's maybe not the strongest in Throne just due to the fact that Throne is so very heavy on high statted units and other things like that. Quinn might not match up as well on the board there, but the fact that it is still drawing a card and giving you that information could make it relevant in Throne just due to the abilities that it has on the table, like card advantage wise and just general like overall establishing board wise. I think this card has a little bit of potential in Throne, but it's probably most strong in Expedition, where to me, this seems like an absolute bomb. It's a really, really powerful card to be playing at this particular level, and then once you are playing it, you are definitely setting yourself up to get into the next part of your game with full knowledge of what's going on, as well as with more cards than your opponent and a better board. So yeah, Quinn's really filling a lot of different holes on that particular setup. I think it's just really, really working for everything that you want to do on that level. So yeah, this is a really, really sort of good, decently powerful card on a number of different levels. Also, like, good design, good lore. I really, really like Quinn's overall like look and design. It's just like they're just like a cool character and an interesting thing to be putting out on the board. I'm pretty happy with this one. I think it looks better than the 6-cost 7/7 Quinn, which was notably a little bit more unplayable in a lot of different builds. I really, really liked them, but they were not always capable of carrying things due to the fact that they had very, very restrictive influence costs and often didn't provide enough for what kind of influence costs you were spending. But this Quinn really slots well into any number of 2-color and 3-color decks, as well as into some potentially mono-primal lists, and can really push the way that you are playing the game in some interesting ways. I really look forward to seeing how this card is played on a tournament level, just due to the fact that the card gives you so much information about what your opponent is doing, and it allows you to make really, really good decisions about where it is that you want to be playing your next cards after turn 5 and how you want to be countering out your opponent. That kind of information is super, super valuable in games where you are just really, really confident in what your opponent is playing and can effectively counter that thing out. So I think it leads to really, really good decision making. I think it provides decent value. I think it's not overpowered on stat line, but the stat line is tenacious enough and sticky enough to make it so that it's actually worth targeting on occasion. And with that ultimate, it's also protecting your life total and giving you this really nice transition into late game control. And so overall, like, this is A+ design. This is a really, really cool card. It's one of the best promos that's been released this year. And like it's just it's not, I would say, on the overpowered side, but it is strong enough to see play and hopefully see some really really good play in tournaments and in other sort of aspects of the game. I'm just really really excited to play this in the expedition meta and get some really interesting games down with it. So that's Quinn Master Tracker, and that's our card review for today. You can find me on YouTube as Locopojo, as well as Twitch on Locopojo. We're going to be switching up that name very, very shortly. But first, we're going to get some Eternal games in. So be sure to check me out there, and I will see you all later. This has been M. Thanks so much for watching. Cheers.